When my daughter-in-law Jessica handed me that first invoice for $3,000, printed on fancy letterhead with monthly rent due stamped across the top in bold red letters, my first reaction wasn't anger. It wasn't even shock. It was relief. Because after 18 months of watching her slowly try to push me out of my own home, I finally had her in writing. I finally had proof. And honey, let me tell you something about proof. It's the difference between looking crazy and looking prepared. My name is Evelyn Montgomery. I'm 67 years old, and I'm about to tell you the story of how I learned that sometimes the worst betrayals come from the people you invited into your family with open arms. But before we get into all that mess, I need you to do me a favor. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because we share real stories from real women who've been through things you wouldn't believe. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love hearing from folks all over. And if you see that hype button pop up, give it a click. It helps this video reach more people who might need to hear this story. More women who might be going through something similar and think they're alone. Trust me, you're not alone. Now, I'm sitting here in my sunroom, the one I added to this house back in 1998 with money from my late husband Gerald's life insurance, looking out at the garden I've tended for 43 years, and I still can't quite believe what I went through. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because this story, it's got layers like my mama's 7-layer dip, and every single one matters. I bought this house in 1982 with Gerald, right after he got promoted to shift supervisor at the factory. We'd been married 5 years by then, and our son Michael was 3 years old. The house sat on the corner of Maple and 14th Street in Riverside, Ohio, a small town about 40 minutes outside of Cleveland where everybody knew everybody and people still waved at each other from their front porches. It was a 3-bedroom ranch with a basement, a detached garage, and a backyard big enough for Michael to run around in. The mortgage payment was $287 a month, and I remember thinking we'd never be able to afford it, but Gerald was confident. He always was. Those early years were hard, but good, you know what I mean? Gerald worked second shift at the factory, making parts for automobiles. I worked mornings at the elementary school cafeteria, serving lunch to kids who sometimes came in so hungry it broke your heart. We didn't have much, but what we had was ours. I learned how to stretch $1 until it screamed. I could make a 5-pound bag of potatoes last 2 weeks. I sewed Michael's clothes until he was old enough to complain about it. We clicked coupons every Sunday after church. And our big splurge was Friday night pizza from Sal's, $12 for a large pepperoni, and we'd make it last for 2 meals. Michael grew up in this house. I can still show you the growth chart marks on the door frame in the hallway, though I had to paint around them carefully every time we freshened up the walls. There's a dent in the drywall in the living room from when he was 14 and threw a baseball inside. He thought he was going to be grounded for life, but Gerald just made him help patch it up and learn how to do basic home repair. That dent's still visible if you know where to look. This house held every Christmas morning, every birthday party, every scraped knee and bad report card and proud moment of our family's life. Gerald passed away in 2009, heart attack at 61 years old, right there in the driveway as he was getting out of his truck after work. I found him when I came out to call him in for dinner. 15 years later, and I still look at that spot every time I pull in. The grief counselor told me I might want to move, start fresh somewhere without the memories. But this wasn't just Gerald's house, it was our house. It was Michael's childhood home. And by 2009, that mortgage was paid off, free and clear. The house was mine, the only thing I had left that was truly, completely mine. Michael had moved to Columbus for college and stayed there after graduation, working in IT for a healthcare company. He'd visit once a month or so, and we'd talk on the phone every week. He was a good son, attentive but independent, exactly how Gerald and I had raised him to be. Then, in 2021, he called me with news. He'd met someone. Her name was Jessica. She was 29 years old, 12 years younger than Michael, and she worked in marketing. They'd been dating for 8 months, and it was getting serious. I was thrilled, honestly. Michael had dated here and there over the years, but nothing that stuck. He was 42 by then, and I'd started to worry he might end up alone. When he brought Jessica home to meet me that Thanksgiving, I was prepared to love her. I wanted to love her. She was pretty in that carefully put-together way, highlighted blonde hair that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget, perfect makeup, designer jeans with artful rips in them that I knew weren't from actual wear. She worked in marketing for a tech startup in Columbus, and she talked a lot about brand identity and social media presence in ways I didn't entirely understand but pretended to. That first meeting went fine. She complimented my turkey, though I noticed she barely ate any of it. She helped me clear the table and load the dishwasher, making pleasant small talk about how charming and quaint my house was. At the time, I took it as a compliment. Looking back, I can hear the judgment in those words. Quaint, like my home was some kind of museum piece, outdated and out of touch. They got engaged that Christmas. He proposed on Christmas Eve, right here in my living room, by the tree I'd had since 1995. Jessica cried and said yes, and I cried too, because my boy was happy. They set a date for September 2022, 9 months away. The wedding was going to be in Columbus, at some venue that cost more than Gerald and I spent on our entire wedding, including the honeymoon. Jessica's parents were paying for most of it, thank goodness, because the numbers she was throwing around made my head spin. $40,000 for one day? But that's how things are done now, I guess. As the wedding got closer, Jessica started coming around more often, sometimes with Michael, sometimes alone. She'd drive the 40 minutes from Columbus to Riverside, usually on weekday afternoons when she said she was working remotely. She'd bring her laptop and sit at my kitchen table, typing away and taking calls that always seemed urgent and important. I didn't mind. I liked the company. Honestly, the house felt too big and too quiet after Gerald died, and having another woman around, even one young enough to be my daughter, was nice. She started making little comments. "Evelyn, have you thought about updating these countertops? Granite is so much more modern than this laminate." Or, if you painted these cabinets white, it would really open up the space. She'd show me pictures on her phone of houses that looked like they belonged in magazines, all white and gray and what she called clean lines. I'd nod and say maybe, though privately I loved my oak cabinets that Gerald had installed himself in 1994, sanding and staining each one by hand over the course of 3 weekends. The wedding came and went. It was beautiful, I'll give her that. Jessica looked stunning in a dress that probably cost more than my first car. Michael looked happy. I cried during the ceremony, partly from joy and partly from wishing Gerald could have been there to see his son get married. At the reception, I sat at a table with relatives I barely knew, while Jessica's friends, all young and polished and talking about things I didn't understand, dominated the dance floor. After the wedding, Michael and Jessica moved into a nice apartment in Columbus. They talked about buying a house eventually, but Columbus real estate was expensive, and they were saving up. I figured that was that. They'd visit for holidays, call occasionally, live their lives. I'd stay in Riverside in my paid-off house, tend my garden, work my part-time job at the library, and be content. I was 65 years old. I'd had my life. Now it was their turn. But then, in February of 2023, everything changed. Michael called me on a Tuesday evening. His voice had that careful tone people use when they're about to ask for something big. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something. Jessica and I have been discussing our finances, and the rent on our apartment is killing us. We're paying $2,000 a month for 900 square feet. We're trying to save for a down payment on a house, but at this rate, it's going to take years." I knew where this was going before he even asked. "You want to move back home for a while?" "Just temporarily," he said quickly. "A year, maybe 18 months max, just until we can save up enough for a decent down payment. We'd pay you rent, of course, and we'd help around the house. Jessica's really excited about the idea, actually. She thinks it could be fun." I should have said no. Looking back, with everything I know now, I should have told him absolutely not. But he was my son, my only child, and he'd never asked me for anything like this before. He'd been independent, self-sufficient. If he was asking, it must really be important. "You wouldn't have to pay me rent," I said. "It's your childhood home. You're always welcome here." "No, Mom, we'd insist. It's only fair. We're adults, not kids." "How about $500 a month? Would that work?" $500 would more than cover the increase in my utility bills and groceries. It seemed fair. It seemed generous even. So I said yes. They moved in on March 1st, 2023. Jessica immediately started talking about optimizing the space. She wanted to turn Michael's old bedroom, the one I'd kept mostly the same, with his high school trophies still on the shelves, into their master suite. Fine, it was going to be their room. She wanted to use the guest room, the small one where I'd kept my sewing machine and craft supplies, as her home office. Also fine, I could move that stuff down to the basement. But then she started on the common areas. She didn't like my floral sofa. "It's dated, Evelyn, very 1990s. Could we maybe put it in the garage and get something more modern?" I said no. That sofa was perfectly comfortable and had plenty of life left in it. She dropped it, but I could tell she wasn't happy. She didn't like my kitchen curtains. "Evelyn, these roosters are adorable, but they're not exactly stylish. Could we maybe switch them out for some nice linen panels?" I said I liked my rooster curtains. Gerald had given them to me as a joke anniversary gift in 2003, and they made me smile every time I looked at them. She dropped it, but again, I could tell she was annoyed. Little by little, I started to feel like a guest in my own home. Jessica would rearrange things when I was at work, moving my cookbooks to different shelves, organizing my pantry more efficiently, relocating my collection of coffee mugs to a higher cabinet that I could barely reach. When I'd say something, she'd smile and say she was just trying to help, just trying to make things more functional. She wasn't criticizing, she was improving. Michael didn't seem to notice, or if he did, he didn't say anything. He was working long hours, grateful to be saving money, focused on their future. When I tried to mention some of Jessica's improvements to him, he'd laugh it off. "Mom, she's just trying to help out. You know she's into that kind of stuff, organization, design. She's good at it. Just let her do her thing." But it wasn't her thing. It was my house. The $500 arrived like clockwork every month. Jessica would hand me a check on the first, always with a smile. "Thanks so much for letting us stay here, Evelyn. We really appreciate it." It felt transactional in a way that made me uncomfortable, but I cashed the checks and tried not to think about it too much. Then, around month 6, September 2023, Jessica started having friends over. At first, it was just 1 or 2 for dinner. Then it became weekly gatherings, then twice weekly. My house filled with 30-something women in expensive athleisure wear, drinking wine I hadn't bought, eating cheese boards arranged on my grandmother's serving platters, laughing loudly while I sat in my bedroom trying to watch TV. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the cranky mother-in-law. They had every right to have friends over. It was their home too, temporarily. But one night, I overheard Jessica talking to one of her friends. I'd come out of my room to get a glass of water, and they were in the kitchen, their voices carrying clearly down the hallway. "God, this house," Jessica said with a laugh. "Can you believe the decor? It's like stepping into 1987. I keep trying to update things, but Evelyn is so attached to every little knick-knack and dusty old curtain. It's exhausting. Why don't you guys just get your own place? Her friend asked. We're saving for a down payment, but honestly, I'm starting to think we should just stay here. The location's not great, but the house has good bones. With some serious renovations, and I mean gutting basically everything, it could be really nice, modern, worth something. My hand froze on the refrigerator door. I stood there in the dark hallway, listening. You'd buy this house from her? The friend asked. Eventually, maybe. Or Jessica paused, and I could hear the smile in her voice. She's not getting any younger. This house is going to be Michael's one day anyway. Why not start making it livable now? I went back to my room without getting the water. I lay awake until 3 in the morning, her words playing over and over in my head. She's not getting any younger. This house is going to be Michael's one day anyway. That was the first time I felt it, real fear. The kind that starts in your stomach and spreads through your whole body like cold water. Because I suddenly understood what was happening. Jessica wasn't waiting for me to die. She was trying to push me out. The changes started small after that night. So small, I almost didn't notice at first. Jessica began forgetting to tell me when they'd made plans that involved the house. I'd come home from the library to find a cleaning crew scrubbing my bathroom, people I'd never met going through my personal spaces. "Oh, I thought I mentioned it," Jessica would say. "I hired them to deep clean. Don't worry, I paid for it. Consider it our contribution to the household." Or I'd wake up Saturday morning to find contractors in my backyard measuring for a new deck. "Surprise," Jessica announced. "We're upgrading the outdoor space. It'll increase the property value significantly. You'll thank us later." I didn't want a new deck. I liked my backyard the way it was. Simple, easy to maintain. But when I tried to object, Jessica acted like I was being unreasonable. "Evelyn, we're doing this for you, for the house. You should be grateful." That word, grateful, it started appearing more and more in her vocabulary. I should be grateful they were fixing things, grateful they were improving things, grateful they were even there, paying rent and helping out a lonely old widow. Michael remained oblivious. When I tried to talk to him about it, he'd sigh and say, "Mom, Jessica's just excited about home improvement. You know how she is. She doesn't mean anything by it. Can't you two just get along?" Get along, as if I was the problem, as if I was the one making things difficult. Then came the night Jessica announced they were having Thanksgiving at the house, not asking, announcing. "We'll host here this year. I've already invited my parents and my sister's family. It'll be around 20 people. Don't worry, I'll handle everything. You can just relax and enjoy." This was my house. I'd hosted Thanksgiving in this house for 41 years. It was my holiday, my tradition. But when I said as much, Jessica's expression went cold. "Evelyn, we live here too. We pay rent. We have just as much right to host holidays as you do. I'm not asking permission. I'm being polite by informing you." Michael took her side. "Mom, what's the big deal?" "You always complain about how much work Thanksgiving is. Let Jessica do it. Take a break for once." So I did. I sat in my own dining room at Thanksgiving 2023 while Jessica's mother made passive-aggressive comments about the outdated wallpaper, while her father monopolized the TV remote, while her sister's kids ran screaming through the house, touching everything with their sticky hands. Jessica had rearranged all my furniture to accommodate the crowd, and somehow it never got put back the way it was. December came. Jessica announced they were putting up a Christmas tree in the living room. A modern one, all white and silver, nothing like the traditional green tree with multicolored lights and homemade ornaments I'd used for decades. "It'll look so much better with the aesthetic I'm going for," she said. My tree, the one Gerald and I had bought in 1995, stayed in the garage. By January 2024, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Jessica had systematically taken over every common space. Her decor, her rules, her way of doing things. The $500 rent checks kept coming, though now they felt less like a contribution and more like a receipt, like she was buying her way into ownership piece by piece. And then came the night in February, almost exactly a year after they'd moved in, when everything came to a head. I came home from the library around 6 p.m. to find Jessica sitting at my kitchen table with a notebook and calculator. She looked up when I came in, and her expression was businesslike, cold. "Evelyn, we need to talk about the financial arrangement here." I set down my purse. "Okay." "Michael and I have been discussing it, and we don't think $500 a month is really fair, not to us." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "I mean we're paying below market rate by a significant amount. If you were to rent out rooms in this house on the open market, you could easily get $1,200 a room. We're occupying 2 rooms, the master bedroom and my office. That's $2,400 right there. Plus, we use all the common areas, the living room, kitchen, both bathrooms. When you factor that in, fair market rent for our situation would be closer to $3,000 a month." I stared at her. $3,000? "Jessica, this is my house. You're my son and daughter-in-law, not tenants." "Exactly," she said, her voice sharp. "We're not tenants. We're family, which means we should be treated fairly. Right now, you're profiting off us, Evelyn. You're charging below market rate while we're improving your property, increasing its value. It's not equitable." "I'm not trying to profit off you," I said, my voice shaking. "I let you move in to help you save money. That was the whole point." "And we appreciate that," Jessica said, though her tone suggested she didn't appreciate anything. "But things change. We've been here a year now. We've invested time, money, and labor into this house. It's only fair that our contribution is properly recognized. So moving forward, we'll be paying $3,000 a month." "I don't want $3,000, I said. "I don't need $3,000. "Well, that's the market rate," Jessica said firmly. "Take it or leave it. If you don't think we should pay it, then maybe we should discuss other arrangements. Maybe it's time to talk about putting the house in Michael's name. Since he's going to inherit it anyway, it might make sense to transfer ownership now, for tax purposes." And there it was, the real agenda. She didn't want to pay more rent. She wanted the house. She wanted me out. "This house is mine," I said, my voice stronger now. "Gerald and I bought it. We paid for it. It's mine, and it's staying mine." Jessica smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "We'll see about that." That was on a Friday night. By Monday morning, I had the invoice on my kitchen counter. Printed on professional letterhead, Montgomery Household Expenses, with a breakdown of charges. Room rental, $2,400. Common area usage, $400. Utilities surcharge, $200. Total due, $3,000. Payment due date, March 1, 2024. I sat at that kitchen table holding that invoice, my hands shaking, and something inside me that had been bending finally snapped. Because I might be 67 years old, I might be a widow living alone, I might seem like an easy target to a 31-year-old woman who thinks she can steamroll her way into everything she wants. But I was also Evelyn Montgomery, and Evelyn Montgomery doesn't get pushed out of her own goddamn house. I picked up my phone and made a call. The number I dialed belonged to someone I'd known for a very long time, someone Jessica had never bothered to ask about, someone whose name wasn't on any family trees or photo albums, but who was nonetheless one of the most important people in my life. "Diane," I said when she answered, "it's Evelyn. I need to come see you. Not as a friend, professionally." Diane Crawford laughed. "Oh, honey, what has someone done to you?" My daughter-in-law is trying to extort me for rent in my own house, and I think she's planning to take the whole thing from me." There was a pause. Then Diane said, in a voice that had made corporate executives and opposing counsel shake in their shoes, "Come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Bring that invoice and any other documentation you have. And Evelyn, don't worry. We're going to handle this." I hung up and looked at that invoice again. $3,000. Monthly rent due. Jessica had made her first mistake. She'd put it in writing. She was about to discover she'd made an even bigger one. She'd assumed I had no one in my corner, no one who could fight back. She'd never asked about the woman I had lunch with every other Tuesday, the woman who'd been my best friend since we were both 18 years old. Working our first jobs at the Woolworths in downtown Cleveland. The woman who'd gone to college at night while raising 3 kids. The woman who'd put herself through law school at 35 years old. The woman who was now one of the most respected family law attorneys in the state of Ohio. Jessica thought she was smart, thought she'd outmaneuvered an old woman with no options. But she'd forgotten one crucial thing. Old women have history. We have connections. We have friends who've been in our lives for 50 years, who know our stories, who will go to war for us without hesitation. And Jessica was about to meet mine. The next morning, I drove to Columbus with that invoice and every piece of documentation I could find. Bank statements showing the $500 payments. Text messages where Jessica had made demands about house changes. Photos I'd started taking of her improvements. Time-stamped evidence of her systematically taking over my space. I'd even printed out screenshots from her social media, posts where she talked about our house and our renovations like she owned the place. Diane's office was in a high-rise downtown, the kind of building with marble floors and important-looking people striding through the lobby. I'd been there before for social visits, but never as a client, never like this. Her secretary showed me into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Diane stood up from behind a massive desk covered in case files and came around to hug me. She was 68, a year older than me, with silver hair she wore short and professional, and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the chairs across from her desk. "Tell me everything. Start from the beginning." So I did. I told her about Michael's request to move in, about Jessica's gradual takeover, about the comments, the changes, the friends, the holidays, the disrespect, and finally, about the invoice. Diane listened without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and steepled her fingers. "Okay," she said, "first things first. This invoice is legally meaningless. She can't unilaterally decide to charge you rent in your own house. That's not how tenant law works. The fact that she printed it on letterhead and included your address makes it even more ridiculous. It's basically just a strongly worded wish list. But what if she tries to force me to pay it?" "Then we laugh at her," Diane said bluntly. "Evelyn, you own that house, free and clear. Your name is on the deed. Unless you voluntarily sign it over, which you're not going to do, there's nothing she can do to take it from you. The law is very clear on this." "She's my daughter-in-law," I said quietly. "Michael's wife. I don't want to destroy their marriage." "You're not destroying anything," Diane said firmly. "She's the one who decided to wage war. You're just defending your territory." She leaned forward. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to draft a formal letter to Jessica and Michael on my firm's letterhead explaining the legal reality of the situation, that you own the house, that their tenancy, which is effectively month to month since you don't have a written lease, can be terminated with 30 days' notice, that any attempt to force you to pay rent in your own property is harassment and possibly extortion, that any further attempts to take over, modify, or claim ownership of your property will be met with legal action. What if that makes things worse? It won't, Diane said, because I'm also going to include a very polite paragraph mentioning that I've been your attorney of record for, let's see, we'll make it official, as of today, 20 years. That I handle all your legal affairs, including your estate planning, that your will and all property documents are securely filed with my office, and that any questions about your property or legal matters should be directed to me. She smiled, and it wasn't friendly. I'm going to make it very clear that you're not some helpless old woman she can push around. You have representation, high-quality representation, the kind that makes people think twice about their next move. Will that be enough? If she's smart, yes. If she's not, Diane shrugged. Then we escalate. But I think once she realizes she's not dealing with just you anymore, that she's dealing with me and the full weight of this firm, she'll back off. Bullies usually do when someone punches back. I felt something loosen in my chest. Relief, maybe, or hope. How much is this going to cost me? Diane waved her hand dismissively. Evelyn, you're my oldest friend. We've been through everything together. Bad boyfriends, worse jobs, raising kids, losing husbands. You think I'm going to charge you for this? Please, this one's on me. Actually, this one's going to be fun for me. I haven't gotten to terrify someone in a while. I'm looking forward to it. I laughed, surprising myself. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. When will you send the letter? Today, Diane said. I'll have it drafted and on its way by 5 p.m. Certified mail, signature required. Should reach them by Thursday at the latest. And Evelyn, don't engage with her until she gets that letter. Don't argue, don't explain, don't defend yourself. If she asks about rent, if she makes demands, if she tries to start something, you smile and say, you'll need to discuss that with my attorney. That's it. Give her nothing. I drove back to Riverside feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Powerful, protected, ready. Jessica was in the kitchen when I got home, making herself a smoothie in the blender I'd bought in 2006. She looked up when I walked in. Where were you? She asked. Not concerned, just nosy. Columbus, I said. Had some business to take care of. What kind of business? I smiled at her, the same sweet smile I'd been giving her for 2 years. Just some paperwork, nothing exciting. I went to my room and waited. 2 days. Just 2 more days until the letter arrived. Jessica spent those 2 days acting like she owned the place. She hosted another wine night Wednesday evening, 8 women, expensive bottles, cheese I didn't buy. I stayed in my room and watched TV. When one of them accidentally broke one of my wine glasses, a crystal one from the set Gerald had bought me for our 10th anniversary, Jessica didn't apologize. She just said, "It's okay, Evelyn, we can get you new ones. Those were pretty outdated anyway." Thursday afternoon, I was in the garden pulling weeds when I heard the mail truck pull up. I didn't rush. I kept working, methodically clearing the bed along the fence while my heart pounded. I heard the front door open, heard Jessica's heels clicking across the hardwood floor to the entryway, heard the mail slot open and closed, then silence. I gave her 10 minutes. Then I dusted off my gloves, stood up, and walked calmly into the house. Jessica was standing in the kitchen, the letter in her hands. The envelope was torn open, certified mail from Crawford and Associates, family law attorneys. Her face had gone completely white. She looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked genuinely shocked. "You got a lawyer," she said. Her voice was flat. Stunned. "Yes," I said pleasantly. "I did. Diane Crawford. She's been handling my legal affairs for years. Lovely woman. Very thorough. Did you read the letter?" Jessica's hands were shaking, just slightly, but I could see it. This says you can evict us." With 30 days notice, yes, that's standard for month-to-month tenancy without a written lease, which is what you've been living under for the past 13 months. You wouldn't, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. She sounded uncertain now, afraid even. That depends entirely on you, I said calmly. The letter explains everything quite clearly. This is my house. You're here because I allowed it. That can change any time I decide it should change. And Jessica, demanding $3,000 in rent in my own home makes me inclined to change it. I was just trying to make things fair, she said weakly. No, I said, my voice harder now. You were trying to push me out. You were trying to make me so uncomfortable, so poor, so powerless that I'd just hand over my house, my home, the place where I raised my son and buried my husband and lived my entire adult life. You thought I was alone. You thought I had no one to protect me. I stepped closer, looked her right in the eye. You were wrong. Michael came home an hour later to find Jessica in tears at the kitchen table, the letter spread out in front of her. I was in the living room. Mom, what the hell is this? He was holding another copy of the letter. Diane had thoughtfully sent one to him as well. It's a letter from my attorney, I said, not looking up from my book, explaining the legal reality of the living situation here. You got a lawyer? Against us? Against your own family? I set down my book and looked at him, really looked at him. My son, 43 years old, a good man who'd somehow become blind to what his wife was doing. Michael, your wife demanded I pay her $3,000 a month in rent in my own house, the house your father and I bought. The house I own free and clear. Did you know about that? He hesitated. She mentioned something about adjusting the rent arrangement. Did she show you the invoice, the one that says Montgomery household expenses and demands payment by March 1st? Another hesitation. I thought she was just organizing things, making it more official. She was trying to force me out, I said quietly. Step by step, piece by piece, taking over my space, my traditions, my life. And you let her. Mom, that's not... Where's my Christmas tree, Michael? The one your father and I bought when you were 13? The one we decorated together every year? He was silent. It's in the garage, I continued, replaced by Jessica's white designer tree. Where are my rooster curtains, the ones your father gave me as a joke that made me laugh every morning for 20 years? Gone. Where's my furniture, my decorations, my way of doing things? Systematically removed and replaced because Jessica decided her taste was better than mine in my own house. She was just trying to help. No, I said firmly. She was trying to take over, and you were too busy being grateful for the money you were saving to notice what it was costing me. Jessica appeared in the doorway, her eyes red. Evelyn, I'm sorry. I didn't mean, I wasn't trying to. Stop, I said. Just stop. I don't want apologies. I want my house back. I want to feel safe and comfortable in my own home again. And I want you both to understand something very clearly. I stood up, looked at both of them. I'm 67 years old. I'm not dead. I'm not helpless. I'm not just going to fade away and let someone else have my life. This house is mine. It's staying mine. And if you can't respect that, if you can't live here as guests in my home, not landlords collecting rent from me, then you need to leave. Michael looked like I'd slapped him. Mom, we're not trying to take your house. Then why, I said, my voice shaking now with anger I'd been holding back for months, did your wife tell her friend that this house would be yours one day anyway, and she might as well make it livable now? Why did she talk about gutting my home and renovating it to her standards? Why did she act like I was just an obstacle standing between her and the property she wanted? Jessica's face went even paler. You heard that? I hear everything, I said coldly. This is my house. These are my walls. Nothing happens here that I don't know about. The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Michael and Jessica stood there in my living room, with my furniture, in my house, looking at each other like they'd just realized they'd walked into a trap of their own making. I think, I said, my voice steady now, you both need to take some time to think about what you want to do next. The letter from my attorney gives you options. You can stay here and respect that this is my home and that I make the decisions about it. Or you can find your own place. But the days of Jessica running this household are over. Michael found his voice first. Mom, this is extreme. Getting a lawyer? Threatening to evict us? We're family. Family respects each other, I said. Family doesn't charge each other rent in their own homes. Family doesn't systematically take over someone else's space and try to push them out. Jessica had been silent, but now she spoke up, and there was a new quality to her voice, calculation. Evelyn, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here. Maybe I was a little too enthusiastic about improving things, but you have to understand, we've put money into this place. The deck, the deep cleaning, the repairs, we've invested in this property. If you're going to kick us out, don't we deserve some compensation for those improvements? I actually laughed. I couldn't help it. Compensation for things I never asked for a deck I didn't want, for rearranging my belongings and replacing my decorations? Jessica, I don't owe you a penny, and if you want to take me to court over it, well, I gestured toward the letter still sitting on the coffee table. My lawyer would be delighted to handle that case. What Jessica didn't know, what I hadn't told anyone, was that after my meeting with Diane, I'd gone one step further. I'd had Diane draw up a new will, very specific, very clear. The house would go to Michael, yes, but only after my death and with conditions. He couldn't sell it for at least 5 years. He couldn't let anyone else claim ownership. And if he tried to contest these terms, or if there was any evidence he'd tried to force me out or take the property before my natural death, everything would go to charity instead. The Riverside Women's Shelter, to be exact. Diane had smiled when I told her what I wanted. You're building a fortress, she'd said, making sure they can't pressure you, can't wait you out, can't manipulate the situation. Smart. I learned from the best, I'd replied. That will was locked in Diane's office safe, signed, witnessed, notarized, completely legal. Michael would get the house eventually, yes, but only if he treated me with respect and dignity for the rest of my life. Only if he let me live in my own home on my own terms. I wasn't about to tell him or Jessica about those conditions. Not yet. That was my insurance policy, my nuclear option if things escalated. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the house was tense. Jessica stopped trying to redecorate. She stopped inviting friends over. She moved carefully around me, like I was a bomb that might explode at any moment. Michael worked late most nights, avoiding the situation entirely. They whispered to each other behind closed doors. I could hear the low murmur of their voices from their bedroom, urgent and worried. Good, let them worry. Let them feel uncomfortable for once. On Sunday evening, 5 days after the letter arrived, they came to find me. I was in the sunroom, reading the newspaper and drinking my tea. They stood in the doorway together, and I could tell they'd prepared what they were going to say. Mom, Michael started, we've been talking about everything, and we want to apologize. I set down my newspaper and looked at him, waited. Jessica stepped forward. Her usual confidence was gone, replaced by something more careful. More genuine, maybe, Or maybe just better acted. Evelyn, I'm sorry. I got carried away with trying to make this place mine. I didn't respect that it was your home first. I didn't think about what it felt like from your perspective. I was wrong. And the $3,000 rent demand? I asked. She flinched. That was stupid. I was being petty because you wouldn't let me change things, and I lashed out. I shouldn't have done that. Any of it. Michael added, "We don't want to fight with you, Mom. We don't want lawyers involved. We want to work this out as a family." "Then here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You're going to pay $500 a month as originally agreed, not a penny more. You're going to put back my rooster curtains, my Christmas tree, and any other decorations you removed. You're going to stop making changes to my house without asking me first. You're going to stop treating me like an inconvenience in my own home. And you're going to actively look for your own place, because this arrangement, you living here, needs an end date." Jessica opened her mouth, but I held up my hand. "I'm not kicking you out tomorrow. You can stay through the summer while you look for something. That gives you 4 months. But come September 1st, you need to be moved out. That's non-negotiable." Michael looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. "4 months," he said quietly. "Okay, we can work with that." "And one more thing," I said, standing up to look them both in the eye. "You need to understand that this house is mine. It will be mine until I die. I don't care what you thought, what you planned, what you assumed about inheritance. You don't get to plan my death. You don't get to act like I'm already gone. I'm here, I'm alive. And I intend to stay that way for a good long while." Jessica nodded quickly. "Of course, absolutely. We never meant—" "You did," I interrupted. "You absolutely did mean it. But now you know better. Now you know I'm not alone. Now you know I have people who will protect me. And maybe that'll make you think twice before you try something like this again." They left the room without another word. I sat back down with my tea, my hands shaking slightly from the adrenaline, and allowed myself a small smile. But I wasn't naive. I didn't trust that the problem was solved. People like Jessica didn't give up that easily. They just got sneakier. So I started documenting everything. I kept a journal, dates, times, conversations, incidents. I took photos of the house regularly, time-stamped proof of the condition of everything. I saved every text message, every email. I made copies of the rent checks. I was building a case file just in case I needed it. Diane approved. "You're thinking like a lawyer now," she said when I told her. "That's good, because the most important thing in any dispute is documentation. Emotions don't hold up in court. Feelings don't matter to a judge. But records, proof, that's everything." March passed. April came. On the surface, things seemed better. Jessica was polite, almost overly so. She asked before making any changes. She stopped hosting parties. She even put my rooster curtains back up, though I could tell it physically pained her to do it. But I watched her, I paid attention, and I noticed little things that made me uneasy. She spent a lot of time on her laptop, researching things. I'd walk by and see tabs open about property law, elder care, power of attorney. She'd close them quickly when she noticed me, but not before I caught glimpses. She was looking for loopholes, ways around the situation. She also started being very sweet to me, overly sweet, making me coffee in the morning, asking about my day at the library, complimenting my cooking. It felt manipulative, like she was trying to rebuild trust so she could exploit it later. I didn't buy it for a second. One afternoon in late April, I came home early from the library, they'd closed for a staff training day, and found Jessica in my bedroom. Not just in the doorway, inside, going through my dresser drawers. "Jessica," I said sharply, "what are you doing?" She jumped, spun around, her face flushing red. "Oh, Evelyn, I didn't hear you come in. I thought I saw a mouse run in here earlier, and I was checking to make sure it didn't get into your things." "A mouse?" I said flatly. "Yeah, you know how old houses are. They get in through the foundation sometimes." I walked further into the room. My jewelry box was open. Nothing was missing. I checked immediately, but it had clearly been handled. Did the mouse get into my jewelry box too? "Get out," I said quietly. "Get out of my room right now." She left quickly, making more excuses I didn't listen to. The moment she was gone, I checked everything. Nothing was missing, but things had been moved. My important documents, birth certificate, social security card, deed to the house, were in a folder in my closet, and that folder had been disturbed, not taken, just examined. She'd been looking for something, information maybe, or seeing what I had, what might be valuable, what might be vulnerable. I called Diane immediately. "She was going through your personal documents?" Diane's voice was sharp with anger. "Evelyn, that's serious. That could be considered trespassing, invasion of privacy." "But she lives here," I said. "Doesn't that give her some right to be in the house?" "Not in your private bedroom, going through your personal belongings without permission. That's a violation. You could press charges if you wanted to." "I don't want to press charges. I want her gone." "Then we accelerate the timeline," Diane said decisively. "Forget September. We're going to issue a formal 30-day notice to vacate today. I'll draft it this afternoon, have it delivered tomorrow. They'll be out by the end of May." "Michael's going to be furious." "Let him be furious," Diane said. "His wife crossed a serious line. You gave them a chance to do this the easy way. She's proven she can't be trusted. Time for the hard way." The notice arrived by courier on Thursday afternoon. Official, legal, impossible to ignore. They had 30 days to vacate the property. By May 25th, they needed to be completely moved out. The explosion was immediate. Michael came to my room that evening, the notice in his hand, his face red with anger. "You're kicking us out? Just like that? After we apologized? After we've been trying to make things right?" "Your wife was in my bedroom going through my personal documents," I said calmly, "without my knowledge or permission." "That's why you're being asked to leave." "She said she was looking for a mouse." "There was no mouse, Michael. She was snooping, and I don't feel safe with her in my house anymore." "So that's it? One mistake and we're out?" "One mistake?" I stood up, my voice rising. "Michael, it's been a year and a half of mistakes, of disrespect, of your wife treating my home like it's hers to claim, the rent demand, the takeover of my space, the comments about me not getting any younger, and now violating my privacy in my own bedroom? How many chances am I supposed to give?" "She's my wife," he said, and his voice broke a little. "If you kick her out, you're choosing her over me. You're telling me to choose between you and her?" "No," I said firmly. "You already chose. You chose her side every single time she disrespected me, every time she made a change I didn't want, every time she acted like this was her house instead of mine. You chose her then. I'm just finally choosing myself." He left without another word. I heard him and Jessica arguing loudly in their room that night. Heard her crying, heard him defending her, then defending me, then sounding confused and angry and lost. I felt bad. I did. He was my son. I'd never wanted to hurt him. But I also wasn't going to set myself on fire to keep him warm. The next morning, I found a note slipped under my door, Jessica's handwriting. "Evelyn, please, can we talk? Just the two of us?" I crumpled it up and threw it away. Over the next 2 weeks, they started packing. Slowly at first, then more urgently as the deadline approached. Jessica found an apartment in Columbus, not as nice as they'd wanted, more expensive than they'd hoped, but available. Michael arranged for movers. They sorted through their things, separating what was theirs from what was mine. Jessica tried to talk to me several times. I refused. What was there to say? She'd shown me exactly who she was. I believed her. But I did talk to Michael. One evening, about a week before they were set to move, I found him alone in the garage, packing up tools. "Can we talk?" I asked. He looked up, surprised. "Yeah, of course." I sat down on an overturned crate. "I want you to understand something. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this to protect myself." "I know you think Jessica was trying to take the house," he said, "but Mom, I really don't think she was. I think she just got carried away with trying to make it nice." "Michael," I interrupted, "stop defending her for a second and really think. The rent invoice, going through my personal things, the comments she made about me not getting any younger, the way she took over every part of this house without asking. Do you really think all of that was innocent?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I think she wanted us to have a nice place to live." "She wanted us to have a house," I corrected, "this house, without having to wait for me to die first." And whether she consciously planned it or not, she was pushing me toward a corner where I'd either have to give up my home or live in misery. "You're being dramatic." "Am I?" I looked at him. "Tell me honestly, if I hadn't gotten Diane involved, if I'd just kept quiet and let things continue the way they were going, where do you think we'd be in 5 years, 10 years? Do you think I'd still be living here comfortably, or do you think I'd be in some tiny apartment somewhere or a nursing home while you and Jessica renovated this place to your liking?" He didn't answer, couldn't answer, because we both knew the truth. "I love you," I said quietly. "You're my son. You'll always be my son. But I can't sacrifice my home, my peace, my sense of safety for your marriage. That's too much to ask." "So what happens now?" he asked. "We move out, and then what? We just don't have a relationship anymore?" "That's up to you," I said. "You're welcome to visit. You're welcome to call. But Jessica isn't welcome here anymore. I can't trust her, and I won't pretend I can just to make things easier." "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, honey," I said, standing up. "But it's my life, and I get to decide who I let into it." May 25th arrived. The moving truck pulled up at 8 in the morning. Michael and Jessica had most of their stuff already boxed. I stayed in my room while they loaded everything, only coming out once to do a final walkthrough. The house looked strange with their things gone. Empty spaces where their furniture had been. Bare walls where Jessica's artwork had hung. My rooster curtains back in the kitchen. My old sofa returned to its place in the living room. My Christmas tree brought in from the garage and set up in the corner, even though it was May and made no sense. I walked through each room, reclaiming my space. This was mine again, all mine. Jessica tried one last time to talk to me as they were leaving. "Evelyn, please. I know I messed up. I know I did things wrong, but can we please try to move past this, for Michael's sake?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sympathy, just emptiness. "No," I said simply. "I don't think we can. I hope you two are happy in your new place. I hope you build a good life together. But it won't be here. Not in my house." She got in the car without another word. Michael hugged me stiffly, his eyes red. "I'll call you next week," he said. "I'd like that," I replied. And then they were gone. The moving truck pulled away, their car followed, and I stood in my driveway, on my property, in front of my house, and breathed. The first few days alone were strange. The house felt too quiet after having people in it for 18 months. I walked through the rooms, touching things, rearranging, reclaiming. I put my photo albums back on the bookshelf where they belonged. I hung my old paintings back on the walls. I moved my sewing machine back upstairs to the guest room. I threw away anything Jessica had left behind. A few decorative pillows, some kitchen gadgets I'd never use. All of it went into garbage bags and out to the curb. Diane came over for lunch that Saturday, bringing wine and sandwiches from the deli we both loved. "How are you feeling?" she asked as we sat in the sunroom, the May sun streaming through the windows. "Free," I said, and I meant it, like I can breathe again in my own home. "Has Michael called?" "Twice, short conversations, a little awkward, but he called." "And Jessica?" "Not a word, which is exactly what I want." Diane raised her wine glass. "To strong women who don't take crap from anyone." I clinked my glass against hers. "I'll drink to that." But the story wasn't quite over yet, because 10 days after they moved out, I got a certified letter, not from Diane's office this time, from a different law firm, representing Jessica. She was suing me for $15,000. The letter detailed her claim: the deck they'd built, $8,000, the deep cleaning services, $2,000, various repairs and improvements, $3,500, mental anguish from being wrongfully evicted, $1,500. The letter demanded payment within 30 days, or they'd file a formal lawsuit. I sat at my kitchen table reading that letter, and I started laughing. I laughed until tears ran down my face, because she just wouldn't quit. She just kept pushing, kept trying, kept thinking she could bully me into giving her what she wanted. I called Diane. "She what?" Diane's voice was incredulous. "She's suing me for improvements I never authorized and for mental anguish from an eviction that was completely legal." "Oh, this is beautiful," Diane said, and she sounded delighted. "Evelyn, this is the best thing she could have done, because now we get to go to court. Now we get to put everything on the record, every text message, every invoice, every boundary she crossed. And we get to destroy this ridiculous claim in front of a judge." "You sound excited." "I am excited," Diane admitted. "I'm going to enjoy this. Send me everything, every piece of documentation you have, photos, messages, the original rent invoices, everything. I'm going to build a case that will make her attorney regret ever filing this." "What if she wins?" "She won't," Diane said confidently. "Trust me, this case is going nowhere, but we're going to make sure everyone understands exactly what she tried to do. We're going to make sure there's a legal record of her behavior, because if she ever tries anything like this again with you or anyone else, this case will follow her." The lawsuit was filed officially in mid-June. I was served with papers at the library, which was embarrassing. My coworker saw the process server hand me the envelope, but I held my head high and signed for it. Diane filed our response 2 weeks later. It was a thing of beauty. She didn't just deny Jessica's claims, she counterclaimed harassment, trespassing, attempted extortion, emotional distress. She documented every single thing Jessica had done, with dates, times, witnesses, and evidence. Jessica's attorney contacted Diane within days of receiving the counterclaim. They wanted to settle. "No," I told Diane immediately when she called to tell me. "You sure? They're offering to drop everything. No admission of wrongdoing. Both sides walk away." "No," I repeated. "I want this on record. I want a judge to see what she did. I want it documented that I did nothing wrong. That's going to mean going to court, testifying, having all of this aired publicly." "Good," I said. "Let people know what kind of person she is. Let it be part of her legal history. She started this fight. I'm going to finish it." The preliminary hearing was in August. Small courtroom, family law division, judge who looked about 70 and had clearly seen everything twice. Diane presented our case efficiently. The timeline of events, the documentation, the proof of Jessica's systematic attempt to take over my home. Jessica's attorney tried to argue that she'd made improvements that increased the property value, that she deserved compensation. The judge looked at the invoices, looked at the evidence that I'd never authorized the work, and shook his head. "Counsel, You can't force improvements on someone's property and then demand payment. That's not how the law works. But Your Honor, Mrs. Montgomery benefited from. Mrs. Montgomery is the homeowner, the judge interrupted. She gets to decide what happens to her property. If your client wanted to renovate something, she should have bought her own house. I watched Jessica's face as the judge spoke. She looked angry, embarrassed, but mostly she looked shocked that she was losing. The judge dismissed her case entirely, threw it out without even going to a full trial. And then he turned to Diane. "Counselor, you have counterclaims?" "Yes, Your Honor. We're seeking a restraining order preventing Mrs. Montgomery's daughter-in-law from contacting her or coming near her property without explicit written permission. We are also seeking compensation for legal fees and emotional distress." The judge nodded. "I'll grant the restraining order effective immediately. As for the rest, I'm going to order mediation. You two need to sort out the financial aspects with a neutral third party. But I want to be very clear." He looked directly at Jessica. "Mrs. Montgomery did nothing wrong here. She had every right to ask you to leave her property. She had every right to protect her home. This lawsuit was frivolous at best and harassing at worst. If you continue to pursue legal action against her, I will consider sanctions. Do you understand?" Jessica nodded, her face burning red. "Good. Restraining order is filed. Mediation will be scheduled within 30 days. We're done here." I walked out of that courtroom feeling 10 feet tall. Diane was grinning. "You did great in there," she said. Calm, composed, clear. The judge believed every word. "Because it was all true," I said. "Truth helps," Diane agreed, "but presentation matters too. And you presented yourself exactly right. A reasonable woman defending her home from an unreasonable situation." The mediation happened in September. Jessica's attorney came alone. Jessica herself didn't attend, which was probably smart. They offered $3,000 to settle everything and drop the restraining order. Diane looked at me. I shook my head. "My client will accept $7,500 for legal fees and emotional distress," Diane said. "The restraining order stays in place for a minimum of 2 years, and Jessica signs a document agreeing never to claim any interest in Mrs. Montgomery's property, now or in the future." They tried to negotiate. Diane didn't budge. Finally, they agreed. I got a check for $7,500. Jessica signed away any claim to my house, and she was legally barred from coming near me or my property until September 2026. It was over. Michael called the day after the mediation settled. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Mom," he said, and his voice was tired. "I heard about the settlement." "It's done," I said. "It's finally done. Jessica's pretty upset." "I imagine she is." There was a long pause. "I'm sorry for all of it. I should have seen what was happening. I should have protected you instead of making excuses for her." I felt something in my chest loosen, something I'd been holding tight for months. "Thank you for saying that. I know you don't want to see her. I understand that. But can I still come visit sometimes? Just me?" I thought about it. My son, my only child, the boy I'd raised in this house, the man who'd made mistakes but was trying to acknowledge them. "Yes," I said, "you can visit. You're always welcome here, Michael." "You're my son. That doesn't change." "Even after everything?" "Even after everything," I confirmed. "But Michael, you need to understand. This house stays mine. I'm not discussing inheritance. I'm not talking about what happens to it after I'm gone. I'm living here now, and I intend to keep living here for a long time, on my terms." "I understand," he said quietly. "And Mom, for what it's worth, I'm glad you fought back. I'm glad you didn't let her push you around." "Me too, baby," I said. "Me too." He started visiting once a month, always alone. We'd have lunch, talk about work, and carefully neutral topics. It wasn't the same as it had been before, but it was something, a relationship we were rebuilding piece by piece. I never asked about Jessica. He never volunteered information. That was fine with me. I used the settlement money to do something for myself. I took a trip, a real vacation, the first one since Gerald died. I went to Maine in October with Diane. Rented a cabin by the ocean, spent a week reading and walking on the beach and eating lobster. It was glorious. When I came back to Riverside, my house felt even more like mine. I'd reclaimed it completely. Every room reflected me, my taste, my memories, my life. I painted the kitchen a soft yellow that made me happy. I bought myself a new recliner for the living room, the kind with built-in massage functions. I joined a book club at the library. I started taking watercolor classes at the community center. I was living, not just existing in my house waiting to die like Jessica had seemed to think I should be doing, actually living. People in town heard about the lawsuit. Small towns being what they are, word got around. Some folks asked me about it directly. I kept it simple. My daughter-in-law and I had different ideas about boundaries. We worked it out through the courts. Everything's fine now. Most people understood. A few women, other widows, other grandmothers sought me out specifically. They told me their own stories of being pressured by adult children, of feeling pushed aside in their own lives, of being made to feel like they were just taking up space until they died. What you did, one woman told me, standing up for yourself like that, it gave me courage. My son was trying to get me to sign over my house to him for tax purposes. I said no. And when he pushed, I told him I'd lawyer up just like Evelyn Montgomery did. He backed off real quick. I hadn't meant to become some kind of example, but apparently I had. And you know what? That felt good. It felt like maybe all the pain and stress and fighting had been worth it. If my story could help even one other woman protect herself, then it meant something. Diane laughed when I told her about it. "You're a folk hero now, Evelyn, the grandmother who wouldn't be pushed around." "I'm just a woman who wanted to live in peace in her own house," I said. "That's the most revolutionary thing of all," Diane replied. "An older woman taking up space and refusing to apologize for it." As fall turned to winter, I settled into a new routine, a good routine, my life on my terms. I decorated for Christmas exactly how I wanted, my old tree, my vintage ornaments, my rooster curtains still hanging proudly in the kitchen. I baked cookies and delivered them to neighbors. I hosted a New Year's Eve party for my book club friends. On New Year's Eve, as midnight approached, I stood in my living room surrounded by women my age, strong women, independent women, women who'd survived losses and setbacks and kept going. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Completely, utterly at home. This was my house, my space, my life, and nobody was ever going to take it from me again. It's been almost a year now since Jessica and Michael moved out, a year since I reclaimed my home, and I'm sitting here in my sunroom on this October morning, drinking my coffee and looking out at my garden, and I want to tell you something important. You're never too old to stand up for yourself. You're never too old to say no. You're never too old to fight back when someone tries to take what's yours, whether that's property or dignity or peace or respect. Society tells older women, especially widows, that we should be grateful for whatever we get, that we should be sweet and accommodating and not make waves, that we should step aside gracefully and let the younger generation take over, that our job is to fade into the background and eventually disappear entirely. Screw that. I'm 68 years old. I've earned every gray hair on my head. I've lived through grief and loss and hard times. I've raised a child, buried a husband, worked for 47 years, and paid off a mortgage. I've earned the right to live in my own home, on my own terms, for as long as I'm able. And when someone, even family, even someone I loved, tried to take that from me, I fought back. Not with violence, not with cruelty, but with the law, with documentation, with the support of good friends, and with a spine made of pure steel. Did it cost me something? Yes. My relationship with my daughter-in-law is gone forever. My relationship with my son is different now, more careful, not what it once was. Some family members think I was too harsh. Some people in town think I should have been more forgiving. But I still have my house. I still have my dignity. I still have my peace. And that's worth more than anyone's approval. If you're going through something similar, if someone in your life is pressuring you, pushing you, trying to take what's yours, I want you to know that you can push back. You don't have to be a victim. You don't have to just accept it. Document everything. Keep records. Take photos. Save messages. Build your case. Find your people. Find someone like my Diane, whether that's a lawyer or a friend or a family member or a support group. Find someone who sees your worth and will go to battle for you. Know your rights. I had no idea what my legal standing was until I talked to Diane. I didn't know about tenant law or eviction procedures or restraining orders. Learn what protections you have. Knowledge is power. Don't be afraid to use the systems available to you. The courts, the law, they exist to protect people, including and especially older women who are being taken advantage of. And most importantly, believe that you deserve better. Believe that your comfort matters. Believe that your home should feel like your home. Believe that your life is yours to live, not something to be managed or controlled or waited out by people who think they know better. I learned something through all of this. I learned that being nice doesn't protect you. Being accommodating doesn't earn you respect. Being afraid to rock the boat just means you're more likely to drown when someone decides to tip it over. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes family means drawing boundaries. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is refuse to be a doormat. Michael and I are slowly rebuilding our relationship. It'll never be the same as it was, but maybe that's okay. Maybe it'll be something better, something more honest, more respectful, more adult. Or maybe it won't. Maybe this is as good as it gets. And you know what? I'm okay with that too. Because I've learned that I can survive losing relationships. I can survive being the bad guy in someone else's story. I can survive being called difficult or unreasonable or unforgiving. What I can't survive, what I won't survive, is losing myself, losing my home, losing my peace. Those things are non-negotiable. So here's what I want you to take away from my story. If you're 55 or 65 or 75 or 85 years old and someone in your life is trying to diminish you, push you aside, take what's yours, or make you feel like you're just in the way, listen to me clearly. You are not in the way. You are not used up. You are not past your usefulness. You are not just taking up space until you die. You are a full human being with rights and dignity and value. Your life still matters. Your comfort still matters. Your home, whether that's a house or an apartment or a single room, should be your sanctuary, not your prison. Stand up, speak up, fight back. Get a lawyer if you need one. Call the police if you have to. Document everything. Use every resource available to you. Don't be ashamed to protect yourself. And remember, it's never too late to reclaim your life. I'm 68 years old. I live alone in the house I bought 43 years ago with my late husband. I drink my coffee in my sunroom every morning. I tend my garden. I go to work at the library 3 days a week. I take watercolor classes. I have lunch with my best friend every other Tuesday. I am exactly where I want to be, doing exactly what I want to do, surrounded by exactly the things that make me happy. That's not settling. That's not giving up. That's not just existing. That's victory. And honey, let me tell you, it tastes sweet. So if you're listening to this and you're going through something similar, or if you know someone who is, share this story. Let them know they're not alone. Let them know they can fight back. Let them know there's hope. And hit that like button if this story resonated with you. Subscribe to this channel if you want to hear more real stories from real women who refuse to go quietly. Drop a comment telling me what you thought or sharing your own story. We're building a community here, a community of strong women supporting each other. Because that's what we do. We've been doing it forever. We survive. We adapt. We protect what's ours. And we absolutely, positively refuse to be pushed aside. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are never too old, never too late, never too anything to stand up for yourself and demand the respect you deserve. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a garden to tend and a book club meeting to prepare for. Life doesn't stop just because I'm getting older. In fact, it's just getting better. Take care of yourselves out there, and remember, your life is yours. Claim it, own it, protect it, always.